Again, about the driver's licensing program, in consultation with Ngāti Kahungunu, we have been in touch with Te Tai Whenua o Hertonga, and they gave us some really good feedback on making sure that actually the learners in the driver licensing program are contributing to the ongoing improvements of the driver licensing program. That is not something we had considered, given that we've contracted those programs out, and that was not something in their work plan. So we have now added that as an excerpt of the application for them to talk about how they will get the learners to facilitate the ongoing improvement of the programs, and to make sure that we are focusing on those at-risk communities as well.
Hang on.
A question, please, Mr. Chair.
Yes, no, I think, but I actually saw Councillor Price's hand raised first.
Mine's on item 6, so sorry.
Well, do you want to do your question, then we'll do Councillor Taylor then?
So mine's not really a question, it's just a comment on bearing in mind PGA when you're discussing the transport systems, which is 2 minutes walk from the boundary. And there's a lot of toing and froing between the two, which will get even more when the new stage of PGA is finished.
Is it the Peterborough Green Arena you're referring to?
Yeah.
So I believe that item 6 is in respect to the on-demand trial for Hastings.
Yeah, so I just giving you early notice that that'll come into a similar category, and could be when you're doing something with Jock, it might just bring PGA in a little bit, because there is a lot of inter-travel going to be happening.
And that's a really good point too, because everything we're doing at the moment with the engagement around on-demand, and just acknowledging Rebecca Ashcroft is here, she's our comms head of the engagement strategy that we've got starting now, that everything we're doing in this trial is really going to help lead us into the Napier trial. So we'll be able to say, okay, well, what's the equivalent of the sports park in the Napier environment, and when, at what point do we bring them into that conversation? So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I just had a question or a comment just with regards that contacting the Tai Whenua o Hertonga, that just
in the last 8 weeks to see where that's sitting. We are delayed, and I can speak to that further later in the piece if we would like. We are delayed in the program and the funding, but that's because there are a few questions around how we are delivering this. And it really does come down to, are we having the governing decision making, or is it just that the funding goes out and that the people delivering it have that decision making ability? So I hadn't put it as a decision item, but I think it would be a good discussion piece.
Well, I think the point is that as long as we're reporting back to this committee in full, prior to any decisions needing to be made for the next funding round, I would have thought, with reasons as to why particular providers are being selected, and maybe the outputs of the engagement with the Tai Whenua, including Tamatea, then we'll be on the right track. That's my reflection.
correct.
Yeah, thank you. I just really was asking the question because I wasn't sure where it sat, whether it sat driver's licensing, road safe, then the RTC, or whether it was just through to the RTC. So I'm pleased Katie's able to get her eyes over it and let us know in the future.
Yep.
All right. If that could be minuted, that future reporting is back to the committee, having disestablished the subcommittee of whatever it was, shape or form, at our last meeting. Okay, now, Katie, I'm just going to apologise. Can you just remind me the point you made of what you had requested from Ngāti Kahungunu in terms of expectations from them about how the program's delivered? You made a point.
Yeah, so I'm speaking a little bit blindly here because unfortunately that was engagement that was done before I started I am speaking to. Yeah. So, and apologies, Councillor Taylor, for that. I'm sure we will do more as we go on. But the request that I have seen was what we can be doing to make sure that we are getting to the right people and delivering as well as we can, and not being sort of, I guess, passively delivering funding to a contractor to deliver that. And their response was to make sure that we are getting that feedback level from the learner as much as we are getting that from the deliverer of the program.
Right. So that's translated into performance measures and contracts that we are engaging with in terms of the delivery of that service.
Wondering how that works though, because if you're hearing back from the learner, it'll be someone who's been engaged.
Yeah.
It's the people that aren't there that...
There's also measures in terms of who they are engaging and why.
Yeah.
Right.
So just having a greater look at who their customers are, why they're selecting those customers, and also aligning that with what we know in terms of our road safety targets in the community, and making sure that they're aligned.
So when we're evaluating a particular bid for funding, we would be asking that question. Is the Tai Whenua able to provide any advice, or have they provided any advice as to those hard-to-reach places that they think we need to be embracing? So the funding provider, or so the bidders, know where to look.
Yes, they have, but again, Te Tai Whenua speak to their risk. Yep. At-risk communities, not in terms of wide or central Hawke Bay as well. So I think the issue we have there is that the funding we have got allocated is for a second year of a 2-year program.
Yes.
So while I've got lots of questions around the current model we've got, it's not really going up for re-application or new application until next year. So that is a challenge in its sense, because what we're really asking for is them to provide us an updated work plan that integrates a few more of the Road to Zero, Vision Zero context. And so I think a lot of the engagement and how they design their work plan might be something that changes for the following year.
Right, so that's for 22 to 3.
Yeah. Correct.
So because this is a rollover year. Now, I guess to land that then, should it be a KPI that they evidence consultation with the equivalent of Tai Whenua or Heretaunga for Hastings, whether it's Tātou for Wairoa or Tamatea for Central Hawke's Bay, as to how to show that connection with the the greatest areas of need.
Yeah, I do agree.
Okay. Should we minute that? I don't know if we need a motion to that effect, but could we just minute the discussion around the need for engagement of future funding applicants as an expected KPI of a funding bid, that they show evidence of consultation with mana whenua around areas of greatest need. Did you get that, Peter? Okay, so that's just going to be minuted as part of the discussion of that particular follow-up item. All right, are we done with the follow-up items? Are there any other questions or discussion around follow-up items? Oh, well, that's great. In that case, we can ask for any minor items that are not on the agenda. All right.
Yes.
Aha.
I have a few but important recommendations for route changes. to address go bus drivers' health and safety concerns.
Okay, so we put bus routes for health and safety concerns on minor items, and Api will speak to that when we get to that item.
And I might just briefly mention the ongoing saga of the missed chance for bus stops at Waipati.
Yeah, well, you can include that in your
Okay, cool.
then. So that's all we're doing here is we're calling the item, so you name it, and then later you could speak to it. Are you okay with that, Api?
Yep.
Yeah. And that's not a discussion item. You get to just speak uninterrupted for 5 minutes, and we take it away as because there might be an action coming out of it. You see, yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councillor Kerr.
I'm not sure of the regional council protocols as to how this is dealt with, but I would ask that we consider whether matters are management decisions, operational decisions, or committee governance decisions. I don't know about this matter, so I'll just ask you to consider that when we get to it, please.
Absolutely, but I think that's a matter of debrief because a member of this committee is entitled to speak to a minor item, and if what can frequently arise out of that is a need for it perhaps to be an agenda item on a future meeting, or for a conversation to go offline, or for decisions to be made around precisely what you've just shared, Councillor Kerr. So I think we need to hear from Api first.
Yeah, thank you.
You've made the points made, and yeah, well made. So, all right. Can we move on to the information or performance monitoring Transport Manager's December report? Katie, would you like to speak to that?
Yes. Again, as I'm new to this, I don't know whether or not this is something I expect that everybody's...
Yes, everyone's read it, so it's really just an opportunity for you to highlight any particular aspects that you wish to, redraw our attention to, and then there may be some questions of you.
Yeah. So there is nothing to update on other than with the RPTP, we have received one of our two proposals back, so we are excited for that to be rolling forward. I think, again, this will come back to whether there's any questions. The RideWise program, I can speak to that more in the public transport update as well, but that is moving along with data migration soon as well. The Section 17A review is now nearly complete since writing this report, and additional to that, yeah, that's it. So that's really the only changes that have occurred since writing this report. So otherwise, if there's any questions, happy to answer them in more depth.
Committee members, questions please. Well, I'm not begging a question from you. Do you have any questions? You don't have to have one, it's not compulsory. Councillor Taylor.
I see a headline during the week that Timaru's on-demand public transport hits $200,000 ride milestone. How closely are we following what happens down there with what happens here?
Yeah, very, very closely. And again, just pointing Rebecca out in this room, which is great that she's here because it's a big part of the engagement process. So we've been following what Timaru are doing very, very closely. And they're at the point now with their trial where they're trying to get it to become part of business as usual, which is a huge milestone for them, but it's also a really big hurdle. And so to see how they get that across the line is great learning for us. We're also monitoring, how many calls they get a day, how successful it is at what time of day and things like that. So it's been a fantastic model and we are following it very, very closely. And I know we were talking to Jeremy Dixon, who is from Environment Canterbury. They were sitting at about 6,000 trips shy of their 200,000 mark a couple of weeks ago. So it's great to know that they've hit that quite quickly as well. Yeah.
Supplementary, if I may, Mr. Chairman, is it showing many similarities between what could or should or would happen here?
Very hard to know until we do the trial. Timaru, I guess, a similar population in a sense. However, there is different sort of activities and, very hard to compare the regions. but I'd like to think demographically, yes, some similarities to what we could expect. And it's helped us prepare for, school services, for example, to know how these school students like to use the service, to prepare us so that we're not overwhelming the service. So there are some similarities, but it'd be very hard for us to know until we start the trial how closely linked they are. Yeah.
I think in that regard there is a report to Canterbury Regional Council that was tabled a week or two ago, being an evaluation of the trial and a decision to proceed longer term with it.
Correct.
Would it be possible for that report to be uploaded to Stella as part of this meeting's agenda, just so that rather than being emailed, so that we've actually got it? Because I think it's I haven't had a chance to read it myself. That would be useful.
Do we have access to Stella?
Oh, you don't, of course.
Because it could be
they can maybe just do that in that case.
Yeah. Yep.
Both.
I'll work that out with
If
Peter.
it could be both, because my emails disappear after 3 weeks. They're just gone. They're just not on my system
Yeah.
anymore. So.
Could we just define what report that is if we want?
Katie will know what it is.
Yeah.
So, but it's the Timaru on-demand pilot evaluation. I had a question on when the submission on the emissions reduction plan was due.
24th of November. So
It's gone?
Yep.
Okay. A very comprehensive effort. Now, who's on the Transport Special Interest Group
I am.
within this region?
Myself. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a national
Correct.
Regional.
agglomeration of transport managers.
Yep.
Okay. That letters with me. Let's have a look. Now, item 24, just to bring to your attention, I think, Linda, this may have come out of a discussion you and I had where Linda had raised with me, and I had suggested at one point, I think, with the staff, making it a standing agenda item, but it can equally be a standing part of the Transport Manager's report, where, and I think Linda might be speaking to this later, we've got very serious kind of procurement and supply chain issues and labour constraints and all the rest of it for funded capital works. And so this is just an opportunity for headaches that might be emerging in the rollout at local level by the local controlling authorities of their funded works in the Regional Land Transport Plan that we're assuming will be done. If there's a big problem, that we just sort of raise that here, and if there's anything that can be done about it, well, we discuss that. So, Linda, is that's the point you raised with me?
In part, yes. What we see within some of our other RTCs across Central North Island and the rest of the country is, as well as the Wakakotahi RLTP update, because the RLTP is not purely a Wakakotahi programme of work, that all of the partners in the room have programmes of work that sit underneath that. At the other RTCs, each of the territorial authorities also provide a similar written update to come forwards to the committee to provide visibility of their programme of work, how that relates to the other TLAs as well as Wakakotahi's work, and also to understand what individual TLA's priorities are. And that's just sort of a quarterly matter of course. It's been a really positive way to surface both what's working well, new ways of working, the outcomes that are being achieved, but also any problems or delays that are being experienced. I think when we spoke, Martin, it's probably, and I'll cover off this a little bit in my presentation, due to the current quite interesting economic climate that we're seeing ourselves in New Zealand at the moment, that raises with it additional both opportunities to look at how we work together to ensure that we deliver our joint programmes for Hawke's Bay region, but as well the opportunity to use our collective experience and intelligence to overcome any issues, but making sure that we identify them well ahead of them becoming issues. So that was the nature of that item being included, but also a suggestion for how we continue to improve our reporting to this committee.
So it would be an opportunity for anyone on the TAG, the Technical Advisory Group, to share sort of updates, headaches, good news stories. So red, green and orange, stories around their program rollout.
Yes, it doesn't need to be onerous at all. It can simply be
oral,
that RAG
yeah.
status. Yes, written questions just provides a bit of a sense of how overall as a region all of our programmes of work are tracking, and we can provide some help to that to get some standardisation if that would be beneficial.
Well, could we, in that case, because we have a verbal updates by advisory representatives, can we have it minuted here that our next agenda will have before that I guess a TAG update on RLTP delivery.
I would support that.
Yep.
Again, I don't think we need to formally move a motion that's going to be in the next agenda. I just think it needs to be minuted that it will be. And then when we read the next minutes and we find that it's not, or if we do, we can correct it. All right. Councillor Kerr?
I'd just like to hear from the TAG members if that's easy enough to do, if they're creating similar reports that can be fed in, because I wouldn't like to see additional reporting for additional reporting's sake, knowing how busy focused everyone is. So are the TAG members supportive is my question.
It's a very good question. And I wasn't envisaging formal written reports unless someone particularly felt the need to. There might be something burning a hole in the pocket, but it's just an opportunity for around the room, as I say, red, green and orange light. So who's that with their hand up there? I can't see your name. Sean, speak.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. From our perspective, it's not going to be a lot. I mean, we could contribute 4 or 5 bullet points and then let be delivered as part of a report, either written or verbally at the meeting. Sometimes some of us don't make the meeting. So I don't see it as onerous unless you want tremendous amounts of detail.
Not at all, and there need not be one. It's just simply an opportunity. Thank you. Robin? Just hit it. He's about to.
Hold the space.
I think he's saying it's okay. All right. All right, well, let's put it on the agenda. Can we just trial it and see how it goes? Thank you, and good point, Councillor Kerr. All right.
Sorry, Chair, I found my mute button now. Absolutely, and that could probably be easily delivered as a sort of exceptions report.
Exactly.
Any highlights and lowlights, if we are struggling or if we are getting ahead of programme, for instance.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, apologies, my laptop just got completely fried, so I'm now back on my phone.
Yeah, tried chucking a cup of tea over it. That worked for mine the other day. It's going really well now.
At least I've got a new one then, yeah.
Okay, so it really is just a check-in opportunity, so that we've got it on the agenda, we check in. That's the theory, I think. Okay, any other questions on Katie's report?
Just one through you, Mr. Chair. Item 23 about the Ministry of Education bus letter. Could I please ask that either Sean, our roading manager, Sean McKinley, or Mary Alex get copied into that, because it was one of the issues that was raised from CHB in particular.
Tell you what, I can do one better than that. It's still a draft in my inbox, and it's Katie who sent it to me about 3 weeks ago, so we're getting there. But would you like me to share the draft with you in case you want some input into it?
Thank you, that would be good.
I would appreciate that, because as you say, it started in Kako Road, I think. No, Kaharanaki Road, yeah. That was where I brought it first to the table, but I know there's other parts of Central Hawke's Bay where the issue arises. Thank you. Well, I'll do that. I'll send it on to Councillor Taylor, and we'll complete it and get it off with a Christmas card, the Ministry office. Okay, now is there any discussion on the Transport Manager's report? We've had questions. Anyone, or can someone move that we receive the report? Thank you, Councillor Price. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak to the report? Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak to the report? No, I don't. I just really wanted to comment on how thorough that TSIG submission is on the emissions reduction plan, and really with a view to empowering, as I saw it, city and territorial authorities to have the staff and the resources and the legal machinery to actually do what's needed to meet the plan. So I thought that was a really good flavour to that submission. Otherwise the whole thing's just, excuse the pun, hot air. Okay, item 7. I think we might be hearing from Tina and Chris about this. This is the...
Yes, so we've got Vicky and Tina.
All right.
If they come up to the table, they'll highlight a few key facts and then happy to take some questions.
Thank you very much. Welcome both. Kia ora koroa.
Good morning.
Please do have a seat.
I just sit over here.
Thank you for joining us, Vicky.
Well, thank you for having us. Thank you. So my name is Martina Gross. I'm Manager Regional Assets, and this is Vicky. Vicky is managing the Hawke's Bay Trails. We are here to talk a little bit more about the Bayview Whirinaki Cycleway. I take that the paper have been written, so yes. I won't go into detail. We're going to play a little bit of tag team here. Vicky is going to brief you just a little bit more about the funding and how the funding arrived, and then I'll brief you a little bit more, couple of points on the delivery of the project, where we are at, where we're going, and if there are any questions, please do address them with us. Right?
Awesome. Good morning. So just quickly, a little bit of background just to bring you up to speed. Hawke's Bay Trails are part of the network we have here in Hawke's Bay. We've got the Iway network and we've got the Hawke's Bay Trails. They're one of the 22 great rides. I understand it might be 23 now. I think Lake Dunstan's just got on the ladder, which is fantastic. As a New Zealand Cycle Trail member and as a great ride, we've got design guidelines and standards to actually meet. And I suppose that's the key difference between basically what we call a great ride or what we call an Iway network. We're funded differently. We're funded through tourism, and we're considered a tourism asset from that aspect. Back in 2018, we did a business case for Hawke's Bay Trails to Ministry of Business Innovation and Employment, basically the Minister of Tourism, and 5 projects were agreed to. The Bayview Whirinaki one we're talking about today is actually the northern extension of our existing water ride we're proposing. Yeah.
So in 2018, when the project was agreed to be funded, we split the feasibility study, proposed to split this project into 4 stages. And in 2019, when we start planning the project a little bit more into detail, we start looking into stage 1, which is the coastal line, and then stage 2, which is kind of next to the river, Esk River. And we kind of identify a couple of risks we have to address. And in the paper, I highlighted the risk and also potential options. So if we can't agree on, or if we can't settle on the land, then there is still opportunity to find another additional route. So I wouldn't necessarily say, okay, that's it, we can't carry on with this project. There is still opportunity to do a really good connection. The only issue with that is that if we are going away from the coastline and if we cannot achieve the objective of the Great Ride, we will have to probably call it as an highway rather than a trail, because the objective of the Great Rides are clear. It is needs to provide the tourist experience, and if we are putting it on road, that really doesn't achieve that. So as I highlighted, at the moment where we are at, we've done significant planning stage 1 and stage 2. We talked to the landowners. We are working with Napier City Council, and really where we are at now is we discussed with Napier City Council that the land negotiation with with affected landowners does really need to go through the Napier City Council. They agree that at the moment they are very supportive of the project, but the resources are a little bit of issue. So we will wait for next year and work with Napier City Council and see where if the negotiation went anywhere, and perhaps they also would be very supportive of looking at additional route. Because with the coastal route, also the risk with that is the ongoing maintenance. As coastal environment, it is always comes with a cost. So, as I said, this project is a very attractive project. It's a very wanted project. So we would like to see this progress either way. So in page, I think it's the point 25, you could see there are two tables. One is pretty much saying what we agreed as a contribution from all the councils, so that's an APDC Council, HDC, HBRC, and NCTA. And then the second table is saying, okay, like if we can't agree or if we cannot achieve the grade right, there is opportunity to maybe everyone contribute more funding, and we still can see the project to go ahead. So that is just for a future. If we can't achieve that, there is an opportunity to carry on with it. What I like to propose is that we go away, we pause this until we hear from the APDC Council, and then we come back probably in 6 months' time and we update you as to where we are at, and if we do need to seek additional funding to carry with this project forward.
Thank you, Martina. So the question would be, you'd need to find an additional 500,000, which was the MB contribution, if it's not a great ride, right?
That's correct. If it is not great ride, we will have to then look at
whether we can share a 500 grand additional contribution.
But not just from us. That's kind of proposal how we can split that between.
Yeah, I understand. That's right.
Yeah.
Across the various entities. Now, what I'm interested in is the Napier City Council position. I don't want to, tread on the toes or stray into any kind of negotiations that might be confidential. But is the assumption that Napier City is picking up the tab for the land acquisition at the moment? Is that?
So generally when we do these great rides, and Hawke's Bay Trails is absolutely a collaboration in the background between HBRC, Hastings, Napier and NZTA. So when we go into sections of land, for example, on our stock banks, Hawke's Bay Regional Council, that's actually our asset, so that is our responsibility in the background. So when we're proposing to go along the coastal route, that sits in Napier City Council area. So that's why going forward, their responsibility would be for the maintenance going forward. It's essentially their asset, so to speak. That help
I just see there are some reticence to sell a required strip of land from two residents. Does that imply other residents are happy along the strip? It's just two that aren't? Is that the?
No. So
or is it there are only two residents that you need land from? What's the situation?
There's two residents when we need the land, but there is other residents who needs to agree as well, because it is going to affect them as well. So I forgot to mention that the grade ride is going to be split the ownership, right? The coastal line is going to be more owned and maintained by Napier City Council, and therefore it's really kind of, we can't do the negotiation of the land for them.
Of course, I understand.
So, and then when we go to the riverside, that's really then sitting with us to discuss that part of the project with the landowners on our behalf, because that will be sitting with us.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes.
Councillor Price.
I was just wondering if Robin could comment on consultation along that area, because I've had a few people approach me that are not happy, and I'm not sure where that's at. Are you able to help, Robin?
Yeah, sure. Well, not much of an update, I'm afraid. But yeah, we've got consultation along there, and we've also got land acquisition. So the land acquisition, as the chair has stated, does revolve just around two properties at the moment under the current proposal. As the land that we are looking at acquiring will be contiguous with council maintained foreshore reserve the obvious thing would be that would then be maintained and owned by council. In terms of the wider negotiation, wider consultation, which is obviously a far bigger job because we're going past probably 250 private properties. That's being looked after by another team. I can't update you right now, but I can certainly send an email update or update to the next meeting.
Well, it's just the question I've got. It says, in risk, a strip of land is required from 2 property owners, but then, of course, the cycleway would be in front of other landowners from whom land is not required, but they may nevertheless have a concern. Is the cycle route within an Esplanade reserve that's vested in council, apart from those 2 property owners? Right.
Most of it is, yeah.
So you could actually do it, but it's a consultation issue apart from those 2 landowners, right?
Yes. Correct, yeah.
All right, well, any other questions? Yes.
Just a clarification. Lacane Road, for example, if you use Lacane Road as an on-road section of it, that dispars you from them being a great trail, is that correct? So you would need basically a parallel exclusive cycleway parallel to Lacane Road.
So as it sits now, the section basically from Lacane Road to the Esk River mouth, Napier City Council are more than happy to actually do that provision off-road. So as it sits now, if it was to be a great ride, we'd take it off the road and would actually have it what we call grade separated, 2.5 wide. So it feels a lot safer and more attractive. That's the expectation for a great ride. If we were to go down and say, okay, then we're not prepared to do the risk along the foreshore so much, we would be taking it through quiet back streets or other options, and essentially then it would become on-road. And in those situations, the local quiet roads, research and evidence from feedback from users and for great rides is that people don't want to be on-road. They'd rather be off-road. They feel safer. It's a far better experience. So in that section with Lacane, ideally, if it was to be the great ride option, we'd absolutely go down through the reserve. And that's the feedback from early consultation with the Bayview Whirinaki community is the preference.
Having done a U-turn at the end of Lacane Road on my bike probably 50 to 100 times, that section is perfectly right to ride, but I understand the standards. To meet the Great Trail, you've got to go off-road. But it's a section of road that's perfectly cyclable and safe. And probably to me, the most vital section is the section from the end of Lacane Road through actually to Whirinaki. That's the best possible connection, but obviously to get great trails, you've got to do the whole lot from the southern end of Bayview.
So just further to that, I think the concern will come from Gill Road through. That's where feedback's coming to me from people along there.
Yeah, it's a bold move to put it in the foreshore reserve. However, where we have done that on the sections like Marine Parade or in Bayview, well liked and very well used.
Yeah, I've found that with the experience around the city, people are against it, and once they're in, they're quite happy. It's just getting that hurdle.
All right, well, I think, are there any other questions about the report? I think the proposal to, progress those discussions at a pace Napier City can sustain and then report back is a sensible one. I'm glad that it's still being progressed. Good things take time. Would someone be willing to move receipt of the report?
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment? I'm more than happy to move the report.
Why don't you move the report and then you can make a comment once I've got a seconder.
Sounds good.
Or I'll second. Councillor Kura, would you like to speak?
Oh, yes, please.
I'm a mind reader.
Thank you for this report. I know this area well. I believe you've identified the risks very clearly. I'm just excited that It's still progressing, even if it is in baby steps. It would be fantastic to have it as a great ride and MB funded, because the experience will be so much better. I acknowledged the speakers before about the fears and how they are actually overcome once it's opened up to good people utilising these great assets. So thank you to Vicky, who I've spoken to about this in the past over many years, and to Martina. Thank you to the Napier City Council for being in behind it as well. I look forward to it happening. Fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't wish to speak. All in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? Carried on to the next item. Thank you very much, and you're all free to go. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Martina. Thank you, Chris. So we're on to the road safe update, and that's the next item on the agenda, which is item 8. Now, who is speaking to this report? I'm assuming Katie.
Me again.
Yeah.
I'm a one-woman show today. Okay, so this item is a general update on road safe and also the expo feedback. So just to see whether, so one item to add or to a point to make since we had written this report is that one of the last stops or checkpoints, I believe, has been cancelled. And Matt, you could possibly confirm that that is to do with COVID restrictions?
It was, yeah. It was just on that uncertainty at the time. The chances are we probably could have done it now that we're in a traffic light system, but we didn't know that at the time. You have to make a call early.
Yeah. So as a result of that, we have begun exploring the option of doing return to work fatigue stop in late January to try and curb people's post-holiday, I guess, fog when returning back to a city environment or a town environment after being potentially at the beach or on holiday, which feels like a good idea, and given the budget has been allocated for that kind of work. Just to speak to the cycling amendment, I will just point out, given that there was a little bit of uncertainty, so what is in here is, originally I had written these as 5 items to add to the annual plan, but they've been pulled out and separately added into this as an update. But I just wanted to point out, I guess, and I don't know what from the last meeting, whether it was clear enough what we did in the space of cycling or whether it just felt that it needed to be added to the annual plan as individual items. But I know that Waka Kotahi and ACC are doing really good work in the bike ready space, so even though that's not specifically under road safe, I thought that's really important to add that as part of the general work done on cycling safety. And then the remainder of the report is the feedback on the expo. So if there are any questions, happy to answer any of them.
I just have a question. How does COVID affect the fatigue stop?
So, Mr. Chair, originally it was to do with the interface between the police and the motorist. And it's always difficult for us when we're at the higher levels of COVID to justify, for instance, evidence breath testing when you're using the same device to point into people's cars. So as the threat level or risk level drops, then we're more able to carry out that kind of work in a safe fashion, and it does involve more cleaning of our devices and so on. So. And of course, the longer it takes us, the longer the delays we give to the motorists. So it's just not tenable, but it will be.
But that's why it's a return to work rather than
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I noticed the feedback from the expo. There's a comment in here that says there was a limited feedback from some of the schools. Was that unexpected? It says paragraph 31, the low feedback response from schools. Was that just a survey technique issue, do you think? Or?
Yes. Yes. So I don't know whether comparatively to previous years that it's significantly lower, but I have outlined it as, given that they're being handed a piece of paper, have to fill it in and return it. I identified that quite quickly as a barrier.
Okay.
Now that we are quite open to QR codes, it's possibly a very good idea to get people to do a very quick scan, smiley face, ka pai, this was great, what did you like the most, tick the box type thing, which I think will get a greater response for us to be able to grow the expo moving forward.
All right. Any other questions people have got? All right. Would someone be willing to move that the report be received? Councillor Taylor, Councillor Price, all in favour? Anyone against? Oh, okay. In that case, we're into the public transport update, which I strongly suspect that you're going to address, Katie.
Yes, correct.
Need to be here.
You'll be sick of the sound of my voice soon.
Oh.
So possibly I'll give a bit more of an on-demand update, and as hard to ask questions when you don't know where it's at. So the on-demand trial moves quickly now, which is great, given that previously obviously we'd been in baby steps. We are now in a really pivotal part of the engagement process. So we have had a couple of really productive workshops where we have looked at the profiling of current users but also potential future users and how we engage with those people. So as we are starting with Hastings, we are doing this with Hastings in mind. However, we're making sure that all the work that we do is translatable to multiple communities to make sure that we're helping ourselves be better, I guess, and quicker and more engaged in each future location we move into. The feedback has been that we do really need to focus on the future user and to grow a completely new and quite supportive of public transport market. And we also have been working quite heavily in the branding space. We had been given the permission from Timaru to use the My Way brand, and we are just working out how we make that our own, how we integrate that with our own iWay network and Hawke's Bay Regional Council's general public transport network as well, because network integration is the most important thing going forward to make sure we have a successful public transport network. So all of those pieces are in play, and we are going to begin riding buses next week to ensure that we are catching people as early as possible, those that are going to see the disruption, because that is the thing to consider. Is at the moment we're doing a 1-for-1 replacement with the 16A, 16B and 17 routes, that those people will see a disruption to their daily routine. However, everybody else will see a new product to be able to use to change their daily routine potentially. So we're going to be surveying those people and seeing what their movements are like, whether they transfer outside of that circuit, whether they use 2 or more buses, whether they use it to go shopping or to work or to school.
Katie, how does that survey work? How are you going to do that?
So we're going to do that in person on bus.
So sitting there next to people and,
yeah.
Hello, can I talk to you?
On the other side of the aisle with good distance, and wearing masks, of course. But that is the best way to get people actively involved. Survey responses when you send them out via Facebook, they're never very high. And it's a good way for us to be able to read between the lines as well, which I think is really important in this process.
All right.
Would you like me to carry on through the public transport report or ask for questions on demand specifically?
Well, is there anything else in the report that you wanted to cover by way of introductory comments, and then we can move to questions on the report generally, including this topic?
Yeah, so the only other point is an update to the Rideways program. So that is something that we had previously not done for what I believe were budget reasons. However, we're at a point where actually it's far more effective for us to join that. So we are migrating to Rideways 1. We are one of the only, if not the only, regional council to not be on that system. And we have since recently had good feedback from the operators, or at least some of the more forward-thinking operators, that they are really supportive of Rideways program. There are likely to be a couple of operators that potentially can't get on board because of their technological boundaries that they have. And it requires every taxi operator or mobility service operator to have a payment system within their vehicle, but some of them do not, which is an issue that will diminish our availability. However, we believe that there is more than enough services to provide a really good total mobility service still.
Okay, the immediate question to me is, so is this like a kind of B card for
Effectively, yes.
total mobility?
Yes, and unfortunately, before the question is asked, they do not integrate. Although I believe work is being done at a national level to look at ticketing integration, which would be great. But no, this is a separate card that is, if you are assessed by, say for example, age concern to be needing your total mobility service, you will then get an ID card that is also a swipe card or payment system.
So you load money onto that in advance, or it can, that type of thing?
Correct, and it also then deducts the amount that's subsidised by us effectively. So there's an integrated network that connects us as a regional council to the assessor that assesses the individual to then get them the card for them to travel, and then the operator is able to invoice back through that.
Sounds sensible.
So very, very good.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie. Questions from members? Do we have questions on Councillor Kerr?
Thank you, Katie. With regard to public transport in general, and as we look to move to this on demand, how are we accessing or getting information from our potential users? I really like that you're getting on buses to talk to the current users, but the people we actually want are those that are not using it at the moment.
Correct, and actually your name is on our list, Councillor Kerr. So just this morning we've had another meeting. So obviously we want to meet with the current users first, to not as such get them out of the way, but to make sure that we are preparing ourselves for the disruption of those that are currently using it. But the bulk of our engagement is going to be with non-bus users, because obviously we're wanting to grow the network, not just sustain it, otherwise we may as well stay doing what we're doing. But we have identified that the most significant way of us doing that, engage with an actual engagement, not just passively, is to get advocates on board with us. So yourself with the councillors, the Hastings District councillors, but also we are looking to get quite involved with the Hastings Business Association in getting the businesses on board. I know that works very well with the vibrancy of the Hastings city, and then of course schools as well as Tai Whenua, as well as also, I'm trying to think of the word that I'm looking for, which is
Hawke's Bay?
Oh, yes, or the regional sports park, but I'm looking for the innovators. That's what the word I'm going for. So the people that are always going to be the ones that will jump on board and then sing loudly from the top of the mountain as well, because those people are within all sorts of communities, so it's not as such that we have to I guess find every person in Hawke's Bay, but also those people that are going to jump on board and advocate for us really loudly as well.
Councillor Kerr, just further to that, we have some of your wonderful staff members on our working group who are connecting us into their community groups. Correct. So working very much through HDC on this one.
Yeah, so Ian has been really involved the whole process, Councillor Kerr, so that's been really fantastic. And so taking his advice as we go.
Thank you, Katrina. Thank you, Katie.
Yeah. Any other questions? I've got a few comments, but any other questions?
Chair. Chair.
Thank you for, again, my eyes are failing me. So, Linda.
Just a question, Ridewise. Interested in the decision to move to Ridewise 1 when it's indicated many other councils are moving to Ridewise 2, and the basis for that, and if there's any risks in Ridewise 1 in terms of it not being kept up to date if more and more of the councils are migrating onto the second version, let's say.
So that great question, thank you, Linda. So that took us quite a lot of deliberation, and the reasons for that, first reason is if we waited to move to Ridewise 2, that would put us significantly later in the piece, possibly the end of 2022. There also is not a process in place to move someone from a manual system onto Ridewise 2, so there will be significantly more involved internally to do that. However, moving on to Rideways 1, not only can we do that faster, we will then also join the queue for those moving on to Rideways 2 at that time. So we will be moving on to Rideways 2 at the end of that queue where we would have been otherwise, but in the meantime we are able to join the automated operation, which is going to be significantly easier for our operators and users and assessors as well. So the other good point is that with some people moving off the Rideways system, Rideways 1, and moving on to Rideways 2, it's taking pressure off that slightly older system, and so it's performing better already. So we've seen the risks, but feel that moving on to Rideways 1 will help us achieve that faster, but then also get on to Rideways 2 in a timely way.
Perfect. Many thanks.
All right. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Mr Chair, about the total mobility scheme, just interested in how this is targeted towards Wairoa and CHB people, is it, and how?
Yes, so correct. So our total mobility scheme is open to all people, but the cost is prohibitive, and we're very aware of that. So just the other day, someone from Central Hawke's Bay was on the phone asking about their ability to get a service up to Hastings Hospital. Unfortunately, the way that the subsidy works, it only covers so much, and so then they have to pay the difference, which is the case anywhere in the region. However, there is cost effectiveness in the shorter trips. So there are opportunities for Red Cross shuttles as well as other shuttles and health service shuttles that do operate as well. So very mindful of the fact. However, if they're operating internally in Wairoa or Central Hawke's Bay, they have as much access and equity as anyone else, but it's the distance that they have to travel to the main services like the hospital that is the issue, and we do see that. However, the subsidy is limited to that. So unfortunately, that's the barrier.
Thank you. All right. Someone like to move that report be received? Councillor Price, I'll second it. If you wish to speak, Councillor Price. I just want to thank you. I just want to comment on demand. You'll be surprised to hear. There are three things that we need to get right here. One of those things is those people who currently use the existing service. Two, all of those who don't use public transport at all. And three, the level and quality of service that we provide to both of them groups. Dealing with those that aren't there, that is, this is the opportunity to expand and mode shift being the in term for the third of trips in the region that are less than 2K and all those sorts of things. So it's great to hear that engagement. I've personally got a little bit of nervousness and anxiety around our existing users. You can just see, you can read already the letters to the editor next June. What the hell have they done with my perfectly good public transport system? I used to know when the bus goes and now I haven't got a clue and I had to ring someone and I can't use a smartphone. So that's going to happen. And I was encouraged at the workshop on whatever day it was this week, Tuesday I think. Was it what? Was it last week? Oh, was it? Okay. We would actually be spending quite a bit of time follow up on the survey, but actually distributing information to people who are on the buses now, and we'll need to do that for 3 months before everyone. Otherwise, people who have taken that bus every day and seen the card 30 times will say, "I didn't hear about this." And that's going to be really important. It will be a very simple explanation of the service, frequently asked questions, and contact for more information type, little one pages that we hand out. That's going to be absolutely vital for people who are regular users of public transport now and rely on it to ensure that they can, sustain that transition. So, I just wanted to make that comment. We're on it, but it is something that sort of could have the potential to keep me awake at night in the early part of next year. That's all I wanted to share. All in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? No. Linda, you're on. Can you make sure, as part of your discussion, Linda, you give us the good oil on the state highway or on the expressway business case rejection, if you've got some more light to shed on that, but could you please wait for a moment because I do need to pop out for a second, but you can start your report.
Many thanks. That'll give me a moment to just sort my technology and make sure that we're up and running. Hoping that everyone will be able to see it in slide presentation mode. There we go. We're winning already. First hurdle climbed. Thank you very much, everyone. And Chair, I will touch on the Hawke's Bay Expressway cycle path application at the end of the presentation. So you will note that there is a detailed update in your pack. I won't speak to that, but I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have on the information contained within that. The purpose of this presentation is to provide you with a few updates on what is happening nationally from Waka Kotahi and across the land transport network. We'll move through an update on the RLTP significant activities, and then just a couple of slides that are much more future focused. I would like to understand the RTC's appetite to begin to think a little bit longer term and how we work together to fully leverage the benefits of the NLTP process. And firstly, before we get into all of that, I'm really disappointed that I couldn't be with you all today. All things travel and importantly, keeping everybody and each other safe in the times of COVID have restricted that. So maybe in the new year, I'll get to join you in person for my next RTC meeting. So first update, many of you will have already seen that we are currently consulting on proposed options for bilingual Kura traffic signs. This is part of our work to enable bilingual traffic signs to be used right across Aotearoa, New Zealand. Behind this mahi is our vision to continue to support the revitalisation of this language so that we see, we hear te reo being used in all of the places that we go and we travel through every day. We have been working with partners right across the transport network and communities to begin a selection criteria for which signs we will begin to tackle first on this bilingual journey. Just for a bit of additional context, it's not something that we've embarked on just with a New Zealand lens. We have sought guidance and also to better understand the research and how this was approached both in Scotland and also in Wales, that have both undertaken and are at different stages of their bilingual journey to revitalise their native languages as well. For more information on this project, you can jump on the Waka Kotahi website where you'll get some deeper detail on what we're doing here, but also as well the submission process is still open, so you can provide any feedback into our approach to this. Emissions reduction plan. I read with interest the TSIG submission on this and the information provided to the committee, which was fulsome. It's very good. As mentioned, public consultation for the first ERP led by the Ministry of Environment has now closed. I think that was last week. You'll be well aware that this is the government's response to the recommendations of the Climate Change Commission, which was published back in May of this year. Transport is one of the key sectors that are identified in this plan as having a primary and a significant role in supporting the transition to a low carbon economy across Aotearoa. Waka Kotahi is heavily involved in the development of the government's ERP, but mainly through three strands of work. So that's the content development of the transport package within that, the surrounding policy advice and support required to develop that, and also corresponding advice, importantly, about what sort of financial support and assistance would be required to achieve those aspirations. The draft transport package in the ERP actually includes 30 packages of new work, primarily for Waka Kotahi, and therefore many of them will involve the support and work of local governments. I'm not going to go through the 30 different packages, you'll be pleased to know, but it is important to be aware. I see the smiles, thank God. There's 3 main strands that this really surfaces that we're all beginning to come more and more focus on, and that is reducing the reliance on cars and supporting people to walk, cycle and use public transport, so an overall reduction in vehicle kilometres travelled. The rapid adoption of electric vehicles, but also as well other low emission fuels. And then thirdly, beginning to work on the decarbonisation of our heavy transport and freight across Aotearoa. It was really pleasing to see the emphasis in the submission on the ASI model, so that's the avoid, shift, improve, and that's something that as an RTC we'll begin to look at much more closely as we head, can you believe, into the development of the next NLTP. I do think that it's really, really important that we begin as an RTC to consider in more detail how we want to approach this across Hawke's Bay, particularly given the different types of communities and their priorities, and also our ability to plan and staircase right forward for 20, 30 years' time. So it's something, again, I'll talk about a little bit later, but I think the cogs for us all really need to begin worrying on how we're going to approach this to support our community and support the government's ambitions here. Last national update, and that is Tuaki to Maya, and that's our regulatory strategy. You will all be undoubtedly aware that there was a regulatory failure back at the beginning of 2018. And since that failure, Waka Kotahi has accepted that we failed to prioritise public safety in relation to that incident. We have accepted all recommendations that were put forward by both resulting reports of that incident. And as a result of that, we have undertaken a full review of the regulatory system of the land transport network, including the fees and funding associated with that. This is what has led to the development of this 10-year strategy, which we're now beginning to draft. Importantly, one of the core functions that as a result of those reports that we have already enacted is the appointment of the Director of Land Transport. For clarity for everybody, the four primary functions of that position is to cover the regulatory requirements across safety and security, including personal security, access and mobility, public health and environmental sustainability. We are looking to involve our local government and council partners into the development of the strategy as well as the implementation plan. So we have begun the engagement process, and we are looking to hold a variety of different workshops and webinars to seek feedback on the strategy as well as the fees and funding review. If you are particularly interested to become involved, do let me know, and we can make sure that you're put in touch with the right teams within our regulatory team. Okay, let's get a little bit more local now and back to an update on the RLTP significant related activities. Some of this, many of you will already be familiar with what progress has and hasn't been made, but a quick update here. So the State Highway 5 Napier to Taupo corridor improvements. For the Hawke's Bay section of that, the initial workshop has taken place internally to outline the scope and the approach that will be undertaken to work through to the feasibility study. The final workshop for that is scheduled for the end of January 2022, at which point we'll be able to share more detail with you on where that's landed. For the Marae Kako Road and York Road roundabout, we're just working with Council on the progression of that business case and the related options for that roundabout and intersection. State Highway 51, that's the Ellison Street to Farden Road. We are been in quite a bit of communications. Thank you, Napier City Council, for all your work with us on that, as well as KiwiRail to develop those concept plans. There's a number of safety improvements that we're working collectively on along that stretch, but particularly one of those high-risk intersections. The project is not yet funded, but it will be going through into feasibility next year. The State Highway 2, the Waitra, different project altogether, Waipawa to Waipukurau shared pathway, that's progressing really well. We have experienced a few delays, as many people's projects have, just around COVID and the impact on our contractors. But we have got an agreement to have a blessing on site with iwi early in the new year. We are just developing a point of entry for a solution for the one point that's got a bit of severance on that route, and that's the bridge across the river. So that point of entry will be getting underway shortly. The Mahia connectivity, we just need to continue our work with the council. That has got probable funding indicated through the NLTP, but just got to make sure that we've got the local council share locked in for that as well. And then we covered off earlier the State Highway 38 discussion, just confirming that that discussion paper is heading to the Wakakotahi board meeting this month. And the State Highway 2 Napier to Wairoa road realignment has not yet started. That will likely get underway in the next financial year. I did promise in the last presentation, where we provided you an overview with the full maintenance programme for this NLTP period, just to give you a little bit more granular detail on what you can expect to see across your network in this financial year. Much of this is getting underway now. I am happy if particular councils would like a little bit more detail on the specific sections that are mentioned here. We can provide that on a one-on-one basis. So do connect with either me or with our regional manager, maintenance and operations, Jack Hankin, for that information. But it is a full and large comprehensive programme for this year across your network, including, I think it's just over, if my math's right quickly, just over about 60 Ks worth of chip sealing as well that has started and will be completed over the course of the construction period. Speed and infrastructure programme. So again, you'll all be aware that we did make the decision and move through to implementation for the speed changes on State Highway 51, and we are just about to head out for the decision announcement in mid-December for State Highway 5. That will look to be implemented once that decision is made and announced. The implementation will occur towards the end of February in 2022. That's primarily driven by, obviously, we have the festive season in the middle of there, but also as well, there are COVID impacts on our ability to get signage into the country, as well as getting it programmed into our maintenance team. So that's why the implementation will just be a little bit delayed once the announcement has happened. For the infrastructure component, we have had an initial workshop taking place that has outlined the scope and the approach. We're going to begin to work through just the feasibility and some concept designs for those infrastructure improvements. We'll have a further workshop on those at the end of January 2022, and then we'll begin to engage with stakeholders for feedback on what we've drawn up for that infrastructure improvement. So as I mentioned, and as we touched on a little bit earlier, the reporting to this RTC, looking forwards right through to mid-2024, so for this NLTP period, we actually have right across the central North Island a 39% programme increase which is great. I'm sure you'd all agree, of which Hawkesbury is one of those that is seeing a substantive increase in what we're collectively trying to achieve. But as we mentioned earlier, that is in amongst quite an interesting economic time. We have a fairly constrained employment market right across the country, from everything from labourers to truck drivers, right through to project managers and beyond. Many of them are swapping around positions, and it's also putting cost implications on salaries towards all of our organisations. We're all seeing inflationary pressures, which is putting cost pressures on our projects. So anything from 10 to over 30%, an increase in escalation on the costs that we were projecting to incur. And we also know that there are a number of different supply chain impacts that are happening on ability to source and get material alongside the sequencing of these projects. So I think on that background, some of the discussions that we've had this week with the likes of the Taranaki RTC and also Tairāwhiti Gisborne RTC is how can we ensure, given the collective ambition and what we're trying to work towards within the region, that we increase the visibility across all of these programs of work. And some really interesting discussions that it's not just the land transport work that's happening. We've also got a lot of utility work that's happening in our regions, a lot of housing work, a lot of other infrastructure around waters as well. So how do we ensure that collectively we've got greater shared awareness to identify opportunities where we can do greater sequencing, we can do better collaboration or shared procurement, just to make sure that we're fully utilising all of our experience to get the best outcomes for the region. I think as well, one thing that we as a team are very keen on is getting greater transparency and visibility across our programmes of work on a no surprises basis. So if there are things that need to be reprioritised, that is something that this committee and the members are aware of, but more importantly supportive of, and we have that collective decision around that. What we wouldn't want to do is get 12, 18, 24 months into this and then be in quite a different position and everybody feeling like they weren't aware that was the direction that it was heading in. So it's not to say that we're collectively not going to deliver, but it is saying that there are risks to that, and I think we've got to be open to how we can ensure that we manage those risks. The other thing, I was really pleased, thank you to the RTAG members for signalling that they are happy to share the reporting that I know that you already all do as part of that group. This is a substantial investment for taxpayers and for the government through Waka Kotahi. We fund 51% of your programmes of work, as well as wholly our programmes of work. So we do have that responsibility to ensure that money is both well spent, but as well that we can provide support to each other to ensure that it's spent within that NLTP period. And then lastly, just looking to the future, I know with many of the councils that are on here, also at the previous RTC meeting, we have begun to touch on what would it look like to do longer term planning together. That's something the local government does very well for the 10 and 30 year horizon, but it's perhaps something that together Waka Kotahi needs to get more aligned with you and your planning to that kind of timescale. The 3-year cycle or churn of the RLTP can be quite short term in many regards for how we approach that planning. So collectively there is an opportunity for us to sit down alongside things like your regional growth planning and the spatial planning that's coming up, to look at what long term do we really want to do around your strategic corridors? How can we better use the land transport network to support your growth aspirations when it comes to urban development, to mode shift, to decarbonisation? And if we have an agreed kind of 30-year view of that, that will help us better use each of those 3-year cycles to staircase our way to achieving that long-term vision on behalf of your communities. In order to support that, my colleague who's on the call with me today, Sarah Downs, does actually have funding to support this work across the central North Island, and that's through our ability, or Sarah's ability, to fund a programme business case or cases for this type of long-term planning. What would be really advantageous is to be able to sit down as a group to consider, not in a meeting like this, it might be better in a workshop meeting or however members feel would best facilitate that, to really get an idea of what is important long term, the clear priorities at a regional level, and how we could best use a programme business case to support that, and support then putting in other funding bids through the RLTP and any other funding sources that may become available in the future. Just a note there as well on that third bullet point. Through this RTC, but through many of our conversations with local government right across the central North Island, forestry is becoming a more and more significant challenge, as well as an opportunity from both an economic and a transport perspective. We've heard this really loud and clear, and for a range of reasons, everything from the impact on local road budgets right through to environmental impacts, but also social impacts. We know too that there's a really fine line here, because for many areas of New Zealand, it's one of the most significant sector that drives job creation and keeps their economy ticking over. What we do, I think, all broadly agree on is that the challenges are coming hard and fast here, and perhaps our current way of working to manage the impact on our land transport network is not currently fit for purpose. So again, Sarah Downs has been instrumental within our business in saying there is a real opportunity here for us to work collectively across both the central North Island, but looking a little bit further down to our links into Wellington due to the port, but also the upper South Island, to do a strategic master planning exercise to understand both what the opportunities are here, what are the clear challenges that we're facing, but alongside other entities such as Kiwi Rail, MPI, the sector themselves, the ports, what could we be doing to better manage this so that we can harness the real benefits, but work more efficiently and effectively to mitigate some of the impacts that we know are very real for many of you. So that again is something that we're happy, we can take questions on, but we will be back in touch with you as councils and through the RTC to get you involved in some way, shape or form into this piece of work as it begins to shape up. So that's the last part of the presentation, but just taking the chair's steer just on an update on the Hawke's Bay Expressway cycleway, and that it didn't secure funding through this NLTP. I know I mentioned it last time, but I think it is really important to reinforce the walking and cycling activity class was significantly oversubscribed in this NLTP period. It was highly competitive. So when all of the national bids through this activity class came in, not only was it oversubscribed, but the investment prioritisation framework, we were only really able to take forwards for committed funding those that reached a priority 1 or 2. This project came much further down the prioritisation list. A little bit of clarity on why that is. Through the assessment process, it was identified the bid that was placed in for this project doesn't fit within the optimal ways to drive mode shift within the current network across Hawke's Bay. And by that we mean how can we look to get the maximum return on this investment to maximise usage of any cycleway, but also as well increasing local journeys by any other means other than cars. And that was one of the main drivers that it was not deemed to be as high a priority as some of the other bids that came through into the activity class. In saying that, that doesn't mean that it's a non-starter, and we do have a couple of options that we can have a look at, knowing how important walking and cycling is to the region, and also as well the emphasis on mode shift. It could be, and this would be in consultation, with my team here at Waka Kotahi, it could be that we actually relook at that bid and revisit it and essentially have a look at if other funding does come through in this NLTP, say within the 2023-24 year, because we do review what is getting spent in each of those activity classes, we could potentially fine-tune that bid and look to resubmit it. I would say that that's probably a less likely avenue for success, to be very honest. However, another suggested way forward that I'd encourage members to consider would be to actually link this piece of work much more formally into your integrated spatial planning, as well as an integrated transport programme, which then really drills down and highlights and strengthens the proposition on both mode shift, but also increased usage by your community. We think that that would be probably an increased likelihood of securing funding, potentially in the longer term as well for other related projects, given the likely shifts and refinement in the government's policy statement and the emphasis on decarbonisation. So I've talked a lot there, so happy to take questions on both the presentation but also the detailed slide in your packs, and I'll just cease slide sharing if I can now.
All right. I've got to thank you very much, Linda. That was very comprehensive. And I need to reflect a little bit on what you've just shared on the expressway business case. While I do that, do other members of the committee have questions of your report? And we'd like to get this wrapped up by sort of midday if we can. So fire away, Councillor Price.
I have a very quick question, and it's very minor. You have a beautiful photograph of the roundabout on the start of your presentation. That was the last time it looked nice. I get a lot of calls about the lack of care of that airport motorway as the entrance to our city. It doesn't get looked after at all. And I believe it's your contractor that may have been, may be responsible for it for some time. Thank you.
I'm aware of the concerns around the roundabout at the airport, and it's something that we're currently discussing with Napier City Council.
Councillor Kerr.
I was really interested in your commentary around a BBC for forestry. Absolutely support having a strategic look at the issue, but I do ask that we make sure that we include those tiny wee rural country roads that are the start of the journey, because they were never created at all for heavy transport. And the amount of damage that is done, it's not just the loss of gravel, but it's the actual whole road breaks away. So absolutely support it as long as it's from tree to processor or port. So that's positive comment. I've just missed a date. When is the national speed limit rule likely to come out as a decision or enforce? I just have a particular spot that needs fixing, and the rule would help.
You haven't missed anything, Councillor Kerr. You're quite right. It was originally proposed to be in place by the end of this calendar year. I would say there was a wealth of substantive feedback from local government, which the Ministry of Transport and then with their support have worked through a comprehensive set of recommendations to the Minister. It has been delayed and is likely to be confirmed by March 2022.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, if I may just ask a couple of questions, further questions.
All right, then I think we're Mayor Craig after you, so fire away.
State Highway 5, so the Napier to Taupo Road. Did I read correctly, $100 million is proposed for, I think, midline separation, etc., from the Hawke's Bay boundary down to State Highway 2?
Yes, you're quite right. That is part of our work this year. I think from the top of my head, as I quickly leaf back through the presentation, I think we have about 29 million at the moment that we're doing the feasibility, the design work and the assessment of that infrastructure improvement. That then goes forward, and if that's all agreed to, we then access the remainder of that funding for that infrastructure improvement work. So yes.
Lovely. And will that improvement work and investment be taken into account with the speed limit review? And I note the speed limit review is due to come out in December, and I'm a bit gobsmacked at such a major decision for my community coming out just before a holiday break.
Yes, and note your concern. It was the subject of much discussion re the timing of that internally, but given both the amount of interest and the delays we've experienced to date, Councillor Kerr, on getting that decision made and out, the decision was taken that it would be better to do that, noting that implementation doesn't happen until February in 2022, as soon as we could. Your point is well made, re the alignment of both infrastructure improvements and speed, and we do have the speed team and the infrastructure team working together within Waka Kotahi now on both of the integration of both of those pieces of work. The nature of the infrastructure improvements and the nature of the speed mean that there shouldn't be any implications or further changes required to the speed as a result of any of those infrastructure improvements, Councillor Kerr.
Right, and one final request. Please could you give myself or our team a heads up before the decision is released? So we don't necessarily, it'd be nice to know the decision, but we don't need to know the decision, just to know when it is coming, so we can notify the community.
Yes,
for
absolutely.
example, the schools and the communities that are most affected. Thank you.
On that one, because it is really important, I always speak to your Chief Executive and Mayor at least one day before anything is made public, primarily because I know that your community and the media come to you first and foremost around that. So I will have that scheduled, and we also do the same for both ministers and MPs.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Look, Linda, I think the point was rather not would these safety improvements lead to a future change to the speed, but were those future improvements factored in to the decision that's now being made in advance of them being completed?
Quite, and I guess what I was saying is that there wouldn't be any future changes up or down of those speeds once they are announced as a result of the infrastructure, so yes.
So those future improvements were factored into the decision that's about to be released to either reduce
or factored in.
Thank you. Now, Mayor Craig.
I'll tautoko what Tanya said about the forestry, but I promise you I won't be as long as Tanya. Hey Linda, just on the Mahia Road, just please keep in mind that is a road of national significance now because of Rocket Lab being a business of national significance. So please don't rely on the council share too much to hold that road up, because it is a pretty important road now. It would be probably doing its job if Rocket Lab wasn't at the end of the peninsula. So that's a really important part of that. And also Mahia is becoming and increasingly becoming a tourism spot for people to end up in, and now without the river and lines going ahead, I'm sure it's going to be absolutely swamped, provided we can get out of traffic light red, not unlike Hawke's Bay, who's on orange.
Point well made. Thank you, Mayor Little.
Councillor Kako.
Through you, Mr Chair. Linda, note the progress of the State Highway 2 College Road Silver Stream and the cycleway. Thank you for those. But it's with some emotion that I wish to convey the dismay of the Waipawa community, dismay of councillors, council staff, business people and residents at the lack of investment in response to grave concerns that you heard at a meeting a few weeks ago with those people about speed dangers where State Highway 2 goes through the Waipawa town centre. How do you think the removal of worn-out speed humps and the relocation of a speed indicator meets those serious community concerns?
Thank you very much for your comment and for raising the concerns of the community councillor. And you're right, we heard from the community, the business owners, hauliers, directly on the evening community engagement session. We all know and we note that the judder bars that were in place were a temporary placement due to the fire at the Foursquare and were never intended to be a permanent solution. The community as well did at the time, as well as voicing concerns regarding safety and speed through their town, also voiced concerns about the judder bars themselves in both noise, drivers trying to avoid them, and also the impact that they were having on the road surface, which was beginning to get fairly significant. We do recognise that the community were very vocal in seeking an alternative to those, and we worked hard to explain with transparency what the processes would be around those. Given the damage that the judder bars were causing to the pavement, we had no option but to remove them. Otherwise, it would actually increase the safety risk to road users. And also require much greater maintenance of that road surface. We have, as was voiced at that community session, the desire to source digital signage to at least alert drivers that they were coming into a built-up town and to take care of their speed. Look, as was suggested by the community, to move the existing digital sign closer to the built-up area of the town. That is one short-term solution. As we have conveyed, and we will be following up more formally with this other suggestions, we are continuing to work through those. As we discussed at length that evening, none of those are something that we can do in rapid style. We are still working to look what can be accelerated, but it is not going to be something that we can hold off the removal of the judder bars for, I'm afraid, councillor. That's just being very, very honest with you.
Through you, Mr Chairman, we're not worried so much about the removal of the temporary speed bumps as the fact that it has slowed traffic. They have slowed traffic down, and we are really concerned that it is going to take something serious happening with a child on those pedestrian crossings or in that busy part of town to actually get through the next stage. It's something I've been a councillor for 2 years. And I attended one of my very first meetings was with Waka Kotahi on the main road, where we witnessed a near miss on the pedestrian crossing and a near miss with a tailgating rear end at the other end of the same stretch. And it just really concerns me. And all I wanted to do was highlight it to you, highlight it to this committee for when it comes up in the next RTP process. RLTP process. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
All right. Do we have any other questions? Craig?
Yes, just going back to State Highway 5, you're saying that the infrastructure and speed limit teams are working together. But if we actually end up with State Highway 5 going down to an 80 km/h speed limit, does that mean the infrastructure is going to be designed down to the 80 km/h? Or would we be looking to do the infrastructure to a higher standard to meet and allow the road to be lifted back up to 100 kilometres per hour?
The infrastructure improvements that are currently moving through the feasibility and the design include items such as median barrier, side rail barrier, signage, looking at stopping points, passing bays, better signage and line of sight. So they're looking and assessing a range of options. The advice through the technical assessment is none of those will have a bearing enough to alter the safe and appropriate speed for State Highway 5.
That answer your question?
Just another one, the State Highway 2 Napier to Warrell realignment that was mentioned in the list. I take it that that's Waikari Gorge you're talking about.
That's what I mean. I think it's. Do you want to answer that? I think that's actually down. That was raised through submissions on the Regional Land Transport Plan. I think that's actually looking around the Eskdale up to Tera railway line corridor, for example.
Okay, well,
Yes.
Because Waikari Gorge is already in train.
Well, as a further question to that, when is construction actually planned for Waikari Gorge?
Bear with me one moment, different presentation.
So Waikari Gorge is being approved, we're getting it up to already purpose, and then it's
Okay, that's right. Sorry, that was yesterday's presentation. The business case has been approved. It was getting up to a shovel-ready status so that when funding is applied, we're ready to go. So construction has not started on that. And just noting that the State Highway 2 Napier project that you mentioned there, that's at a point of entry for business case work to be done. So it's not yet started.
Yeah. Now, Linda, I've got a question. The Awatoto roundabouts you referred to in your report, where exactly would that go?
Which section of the report is that?
Oh, it was on one of your slides, which I've now just closed out of. State Highway 51 Napier to Hastings, median barrier, Awatoto roundabouts, feasibility study, 22 million.
That's on the safety improvements slide, is that right?
Infrastructure project summary, speed and infrastructure program.
Yes. The question is...
Oh, where exactly would that roundabout go?
That's part of the detailed design work that we're working with Napier City Council on. Robin, I don't know if you've got any information there. I don't have the designs right in front of me right now. Sorry, Chair.
I'm just interested as a regular user of that road.
Right.
So, through you, Chair, if I may, the discussions to date, we've had looks at roundabouts at Waitangi Road, right down by the southern end of Ravensdown there. That will potentially give far better access to not only that big vacant site that's there at the moment on the opposite side, but also the council reserve car parks.
Okay.
Also looking at, in fact, both intersections along Marine Parade as well. So there's the Awatoto Road intersection itself.
That's what I was hoping it might be.
Yep. That's a brilliant speed control measure as well as an access measure. We have had a lot of traffic using Tiawa Avenue because it's so difficult to actually get onto the state highway there. And we're also reviewing the Ellison Street Marine Parade intersection by the bump track there. So actually all three of the intersections from council roads across the railway line onto State Highway are under review at the moment, as well as measures in between each of those intersections.
All right, thank you. Linda, if you could include me too, please, on that heads up on the decision. In case my phone starts ringing, that would be appreciated. Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll move receipt of the report. Someone please second that. All in favour?
I'll second it. Please, may I just make one brief comment?
Sure.
To NZTA, I just want to give a shout out to your local team. There's been 2 or 3 occasions where I've had to email them regarding something on a state highway, and they've been actioned as fast as it's been practical to. So just thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr.
And thank you, Linda. Always been the one who takes the heat. But that's, I'm sure, part of the job and not unique to this region, no doubt. So thank you for sharing your time and for the comprehensive report and for the answers you've given. I would like to get the meeting finished and then perhaps see if we can have lunch afterwards. The run sheet says we'd have lunch now and then come back to minor items and perhaps verbal updates. But let's see if we can do that. We've got, Matt, is there anything that you wanted to share in terms of...
It probably fits quite well on the back of Linda's. That I'd just like to bring to your attention that there was a lot of noise around State Highway 5 over 12 months ago when we had 8 people die on it, and we've gone nice and quietly through 12 months. I know, it's always dangerous and you always hold your breath, but
I'm holding on to the...
But it was not luck that took us through those 12 months. There was an awful lot of effort went in by my staff and by Wakakatai on signage and significant increases in output from the police staff on that road. And there's been a good reduction in the amount of crashes. Not a good, but yes, we've increased the amount of people that we've issued infringements to on that and caused some ridiculous speeds on that road, highlighting the fact that the way we're using the road is not conducive to it, safe and appropriate speed. And overall, if you talk about social costs saved on the previous year, it works out at about 44 million.
Okay, well, Matt, thank you. And in all seriousness, the region does owe you a debt of gratitude, your team, for that. That does need to be acknowledged. So thank you. And rightly raised and rightly said. Nicholas, would you like to share anything from Napier Port?
Yes, thank you. I will just do an update on the last items that were shared on the previous meeting. So first one, on the Fakatoo inland port, it's actually not on hold. We're just doing it at a slow pace. What we are carrying on is engagement with the Fakatoo community in iwi, just to keep that relationship going and understanding of what that inland port would do. And also we're doing some discussion with Kura Rail and some preliminary design to understand what the rail sort of siding capacity would be and what sort of capacity we could have on rail rather than road between the Fakatoo inland port and the main port here. So just preliminary design, but we are progressing, but just slow pace at the moment. And then ties up nicely with what Linda was sharing regarding the wall of log coming up. We have made some improvements internally in the port in terms of pavement and chaining area, which we hope will help with some of the flow in and out of the port for tracking. And we've started to implement some monitoring of the track flows to see what further action we could do, especially with the help of technology in the future. And I would like also to confirm that the Wairara train service started on the 5th of October and became a weekday occurrence instead of just a weekend. So Monday to Friday, which means is between 18 to 23 wagon of log being moved every day from that area to Napier port instead of truck. So probably a good impact in terms of road.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Ian, are you there?
No, we've got Ian. Ian's not here today. Ian Anderson.
Was he an apology? Or
Sandy is...
sorry, now I'm with you. Penny's dropped. There you go. Fire away.
Yeah, just on State Highway 5, Matt, thank you to your team. They're actually helping us big time by slowing these idiots down that are doing crazy stuff. But I do disagree with the speed limit dropping on that road. You are going to end up with more noise pollution and phone calls than you've ever wished for, simply because a truck going downhill now has to hold it back another 2 gears to reduce that speed, which means engine brakes are just going to be out the window. So to me that's dumb. What we need is more rolling ability rather than resistance, and that will get the economy right and it'll stop your emissions as well. So that's the 5 one. The other one that's always mentioned, and it's every town I go to, is Forestry Road and how they deteriorate over years. What I would like to know is why are councils not levying the owner or the forestry companies right from the time they plant the seed? And that way the roads would be what they should be at the time of harvest.
Andy, now no comment please, Mayor Craig, and thank you for that. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us?
Just thank you for the...
I'm sure those points have been noted, and Craig?
No further comments.
Have we got any other advisory groups that may wish to speak? No, Graham's not here from cycling, is he?
He was, but he's not anymore.
All right. Maybe he's got out on this glorious day and bushbiking somewhere. Okay, all right. Well, I think thank you very much for our advisory representatives for attending and for the good work you do for our communities. We're over to Api now to talk about the matter you raised earlier. So the floor, the Kako is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pleasure to be here today, and a pleasure to finally meet you, Katie. I've actually addressed this letter to you. Katie is the new Transport Manager. Tēnā koe. The following recommendations for route changes have come from fellow Go Bus drivers to help address numerous health and safety concerns, also supported by the union delegate. The number 11 Napier to Havelock via Clive return, Havelock North to Napier via Clive return needs an extra 5 minutes added to current routes. It was difficult before the recent 80k speed limit changed along Awatoto beachfront to Farndon Road, Clive, but today it is absolutely impossible to keep to the current time schedule. The change will ease any stress that drivers may unwittingly feel. The regular number 21 from Hastings to Havelock North return needs to allow the arriving bus at Havelock North Town Clock to leave 5 minutes earlier so that that bus can travel via Lipkin Crescent Middle Road back to Town Clock via Tamata Road to Arataki Road and back to Town Clock before returning to Hastings, Eastbourne Street. This will allow sufficient time for commuters to make transfers to number 12 buses travelling to Hospital, EIT and Bar or Napier, and once again ease any stress that drivers unwittingly may feel. In return, our drivers are quarterly acknowledged by contented passengers who get to work safely on time. The number 17 Akina route, 3 p.m. from Russell Street, needs to leave 5 minutes earlier, especially when students are back at school, so they can quickly and safely arrive at Hastings, Eastbourne Street, and transfer within the time constraint to number 16A Camberley bus without fear of being left behind and having to wait an unnecessary 60 minutes for the next number 16A bus to arrive. The heavy traffic build-up when schools close from 3 p.m. causes delays, and on wet, miserable winter afternoons, some drivers are subjected to abuse and or intimidation when transfers are missed. Go Bus drivers are planning a union meeting soon and will soon have other concerns. Aroha Nui Api Robin, cultural rep. And so I'll table these to the committee. And okay, cool. And the other matter I had, okay, and so it goes back to the missed opportunity of installing bus stops at Waipatu, and it started earlier this year, and I've been engaged with our chairman Martin and with Tania, and basically I look at it now, and as it's panned out, it's our Hastings District Council road planners who have dropped the ball. And Tania, I don't blame the councillors, your councillors. I don't think anyone knew what was happening over there, honestly. But anyway, just moving forward, and maybe a recommendation, what could happen at Waipatu is that maybe just past Bennett Road, Napier side of Bennett Road, Napier side of the marae, maybe we look at an area around that place to install a bus stop on both sides. Okay, so I think this could be a solution, and that could work. Who knows? The planners might have another idea. So it's just something for us to work on, and so I thought I'd just bring that up. I wanted to bring this matter up because I did bring it up at our Māori committee hui with the council last month, and it was tabled. So I thought I'd just bring it up again today just to let you guys know.
Good up, and thank you for sharing that. I'm sure again that has been heard and noted, and particularly was any member of the Hastings tag team there that
There was.
we got
Jag was there.
Jag was there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know how we can get the message to Jag to perhaps watch that part of the presentation or part of the meeting. That would be useful. Thank you. It isn't an opportunity for discussion, but I do think as long as that message lands where it needs to. Kia ora, Api. Look, I think that's the end of the agenda, and we can formally close. Would you like to close?
Okay then. Okay, kia ora tātou. Mā te atua tātou e manaki, e tiaki, e arahi tō tōna rangi Māori e tēnei rangi, me ngā rā e heke mai nei. Nā reira kia tau kia tātou katoa, te atu whai o tātou ariki a ihu kraiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhi ngā taitanga ki te wairua tapu a ki tonu atu. Āmene.
And now I think there might be some lunch. Eschew that one for the Aucklanders cut loose to come to. Thank you, everyone who's online. You can go and have your lunch too. To drive on the Tapo Road. Have a safe